I'm going to take you back some 27 years ago, back to September 1996, where at the time I was a student and I was living and working in Valencia in Spain. And on a sunny, unassuming bank holiday Monday morning, something happened to me that would change the course of my life forever. I'd gone out for a walk with a friend, and we just got back to her apartment block. I suddenly felt a tap on my shoulder. I looked round, and there was a man there. And I don't know why, but I assumed that he was asking for directions. I did notice, though, in one hand, he was carrying a rolled-up newspaper. The next thing I knew, he'd pulled out a 12-inch knife from that neatly rolled-up newspaper and was holding it to my throat, demanding money. I froze to the spot, absolutely paralyzed with fear. Thank goodness my friend screamed at the top of her voice, and as quickly as he grabbed me, he fled. The emotional fallout of that moment would last me a lifetime. We ran to the safety of my friend's flat, and literally the minute the front door opened, I collapsed. I literally passed out. I was so overwhelmed with fear, I fainted. But little did I know, when I eventually came round, that one day I would look back on that one horrifying moment and realize it was actually the catalyst for positive change in my life. So, what happened next? Crippling PTSD, I disappeared down an inevitable emotional rabbit hole with frequent panic attacks. When I was living on the continent, I was prescribed various meds like tranquilizers, which I absolutely hated. And it wasn't until I got back to the UK, some 12 months later, that my doctor suggested talking therapy. And it was this first foray into talking therapy or counseling, which began decades of me learning how to talk from the heart. Now, I naively assumed that once my allocated sessions would finish, I'd just move on with my life. It turns out, though, that Spanish bank holiday bandit's work had only just begun. I was about to face years of unraveling of emotional knots so big I couldn't even see them. So in my last session with this counselor, I remember her earnestly saying to me, "Georgie, are you really sure there's nothing else you want to talk about?" And me being very British, "No, brilliant, thanks so much, bye." It was the beginning of me realizing that even then, even in that safe space, I wasn't unable to find the words to open up. The problem is that talking when we're already in trouble or we're troubled, it's almost too late. We need to think of talking like a muscle memory, something that is stretched, nurtured, and flexed over years, so it's ready there waiting for us when we most need to call upon it. Now, I spent the last 25 years having talking therapy. I still do it now regularly, and it's taken me all that time to be able to really open up about who I am. So why am I here today? I'm not here to tell you how to spot randoms on bank holiday Mondays with rolled up newspapers, although avoid them at all costs. I'm here simply to talk about talking from the heart. It's one of the first things we learn to do, literally from the moment we're born, from when we take our first breath. So in theory, we should all be really, really good at it. The fact is, though, that many of us, myself included, aren't. But if you Google, "why is talking so hard?" what you will find are reams and reams of pages called things like, "people just don't know when to shut up." Also true. But there's nothing at all at the other end of the scale. I firmly believe it's the people who need to speak the most who are the least equipped to do so. There's one thing, though, I want to be clear about. Yes, I've made my career out of communicating by talking as a broadcast journalist, as a TV presenter, as a communication skills specialist. I love people. I love conversation. What I love more than anything else is finding out about other people. And of course, this spills over into my social life too. I've been told on good authority that you will hear me before you see me when I'm out and about. And someone rather unkindly remarked at a friend's 40th party last summer that I was fully committed. More about that a bit later. But communicating by talking is never more important than my most important role as a mum, particularly because our younger daughter is autistic. So ensuring that I pay razor-sharp attention to everything she says, everything I say to her, picking up on all those tiny nuances of body language is critical, literally, to our survival day to day as a family. So it would be easy to assume someone who's naturally chatty or nosy, as my kids would say, would also be able to seamlessly open up about what's in my heart. The truth is, though, these are two completely different things. I can interview someone. I've interviewed some amazing celebrities in my life. Tom Hanks, Al Pacino, Angelina Jolie. In fact, when I interviewed Al Pacino, I was so excited and nervous, I stumbled over his name. And I called him Mr. Cappuccino. Yeah, that went well. But Al's cool. It wasn't personal. So yeah, but talking from the heart is an entirely different thing. So often when you come to prestigious events like this, you will hear people attribute their success in life to their happy childhoods and their loving upbringings. I'm not going to do that purely because I can't. I don't have many memories of my childhood, but the ones that I do have, the overarching themes are of secrecy, shame, and silence. My dad was an alcoholic, and it was something that was never discussed. It was happening right under our eyes, but we all suffered in silence alongside him. As a parent now, I cannot imagine, first of all, what Dad went through, but equally how my mum coped. But the way she survived was just to shut down. And I'm not criticizing her for that. She just became very, very insular. And there were times where she literally would not speak to me for days and days and days on end. Now, what happens to you when you're a child, when no one models conversation, models problem solving, how to ask for help? It doesn't matter how erudite or well-educated or well-read you are. You simply do not have the words to label those emotions. So I lived in the silence of my own head. And the repercussions and ramifications of this are so insidious. If I did ever show any emotion at home, my family would mock me. And it led to other things that I wasn't able to talk about. I was really badly bullied at school from the ages of 8 to 11. And I didn't ever tell anyone for the simple reason I had nobody to tell. There wasn't a single trusted adult in my life. I literally didn't know how to ask for help. Now, Dad did get help eventually. He went into rehab to the Priory in Roehampton in London. And whilst Dad never emerged with his sobriety intact, he did come home with a substantially beefy set of impressive celebrity friends. So I talk about the pitfalls of not knowing how to talk from the heart with genuine lived experience. To the outside world, I can only imagine that we looked like a normal family. All I ever wanted was to be normal and to fit in. There's this irony now that actually I was masking almost as much as my younger daughter masks now. I became this terrible people pleaser. The point of growing up with constant uncertainty and volatility, it puts your life on an entirely different path. The writer Joy Marino says that children raised on love see things differently to those raised on survival. I have no doubt that my parents did love me, but there's a massive difference between knowing that being shown that you're loved and feeling loved. I never felt loved or seen as a child. So I talk about the pitfalls of not knowing how to speak from the heart, as I was saying, with genuine lived experience, and I know I'm not alone. For a myriad of reasons, there are people all over the world who are just like me, who find it really hard to talk. But interestingly, we're beginning to see some changes. We hear about this apparent epidemic of loneliness or solitude in the Western world, but the wellness industry is beginning to change. There are some really interesting companies beginning to pop up that rather than focusing on physical health, focus on emotional health or relational fitness. And there's one company in New York called Peoplehood. Now, Peoplehood was created by the founders of SoulCycle. Remember that, one of the original spin cycle groups? Essentially what they've done, they've got rid of all those spin bikes and replaced them with chairs. Yeah. Now, as someone who does spin, or tries to do spin twice a week, I would much prefer to sit in a chair for a couple of hours. And basically what you do, you sign up for a relational fitness class instead of a physical fitness class. There are groups of 20 people. It's called Gather, and it's guided conversation, so questioning and listening skills. People had very kindly invited me to join a virtual class, and it was such an eye-opening experience. There was little English country mouse me, my little tidy study painted in farrow and ball, suddenly with all these snazzy New Yorkers on a Zoom call, and they're all in these swanky Manhattan apartments, sharing our hearts with each other. A very, very different Zoom call to the ones I'm used to with work. And whereas I think people had perhaps missed the notion that true connection needs to have familiarity, soul, and trust at the heart of it, they nonetheless recognize this need for communal connection. It's how we thrive as human beings. We're seeing some similar initiatives in the UK. Last year, network channel ITV launched their campaign, Britain Get Talking. Again, an initiative to get the conversation going. And yes, a noble plan. But it struck me immediately, these kind of plans are conjured up by people who come from the privileged position of knowing how to talk and how to access their emotions in the first place. Just expecting people who've never been able to speak properly before to suddenly open up, I think is a nonsense. It's like asking a toddler to make a lasagna from scratch, even the pasta. It's just not going to happen, and actually is messy. In a similar vein, the Princess of Wales's new charity, Shaping Up, was launched this year, and it shines a light on the importance of the early years, which I absolutely agree with. But I feel that she and her other high celebrity cohorts involved in the charity have a disproportionate emphasis on their own happy and, dare I say, benign backgrounds, with no frame of reference for how hard family life can be. There's this tacit assumption if we all just try a little bit harder, we can all be the same. It's not how it works. We cannot hypothesize that we are all alike because regardless of class, background, wealth, we're simply not. Chillingly, Harvard conducted a study a few years ago by Grant and Gluck, and what they did was they followed the same groups of people over a series of decades, and there was one indisputable finding, that it was those people that came from happy upbringings, from loving homes, were they're consistently the most successful. Those who didn't just fell through the cracks. It is my life's work to ensure that my children's life is brighter, better, happier, and more loving than mine ever was. So what can we all do right now? We have the added complexity these days of the rise of AI. Now, Elon Musk refers to AI as being scary good, which technically is grammatically incorrect, but I'm sure that ChatGPT can correct him. We need to work on how we talk to each other and not lose those skills. The problem is the legacy of lockdown continues. We can still effortlessly avoid face-to-face contact if we can't be bothered to see people. We can even remove the risk and jeopardy of someone maybe picking up the phone when you just wanted to leave them a voicemail by leaving them a voice note. We have to reframe, rethink, reimagine how we connect with each other. Let me put this in context. I've now completely reframed what happened to me on that bank holiday Monday in Spain. However desperate that man was that morning to wake up in the morning and wrap that huge knife up like some kind of prize salami and prey on a young girl in broad daylight, however desperate he was, only mirrored how desperate I was to break free from my own circumstances. And what he will never know is how symbolic that wanton act of violence was, holding that knife to my throat that day, was the beginning of setting my voice free. So what can we do? There are 3 things you can all start thinking about right now. First of all, to truly make space for other people, we have to make space in our own hearts and minds for ourselves first. In that enforced silence as a child, I had no choice but to listen to my intuition and to lean into it. And it is still my guiding light. I challenged how I was living was wrong, but it also allowed me to reimagine how my life could be. Secondly, not all talking therapy is alike. Maybe you've tried it and you weren't really sure. Try again. When you connect with the right person, it's like finding a key to a door you've never been able to go through before. And I promise you there's beautiful stuff on the other side. And thirdly, and most importantly, be brave and yes, be vulnerable. It's only by being vulnerable can we open up the conversation. And conversations have to be transactional. It's got to work both ways. Maybe you need to be the one that's vulnerable first to find your words and speak your truth to help others find theirs. So a final thought. In order to be truly seen and heard, we have to find and nurture our own herd. And more important than anything else, if you take one thing away today, it's never too late to talk, to tell. This is my story now. Through sheer hard work, grit, and determination, I have found my peace, I have found my happiness through my own lovely family, through my husband's family, who've really shown me what true love is. And yes, fully present and 100%, fully committed.